much, Erica. Good morning, everybody in the room, and good morning, everybody online. I'm really delighted to be here on behalf of the HEA today, and I send my apologies from our Chief Executive, Dr. Alan Wall, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, so you got stuck with me instead. And a big thank you to Dara for the kind invitation to be here, and just Erica has set it up very nicely for me, but I'd just like to take the opportunity on behalf of us all to say a huge thank you to Dara and Erica and the wonderful colleagues at HEA for putting together such an engaging programme for us. I think we can all see the attention to detail. So this event is the product of a lot of effort by what is an incredibly small team in HEA. So we might just give a token of our appreciation to HEA for all of that work. Dara will give out to me for that later on. So it's always good to start off the day this way, isn't it? As we've been hearing over the course of yesterday, the population in higher education is changing. In the Irish context, over 15% of new entrants to higher education present with a disability. Over 30% of our entrants to higher education are entering via diverse pathways, and over 15% of our higher education students are internationally domiciled. So huge increases in diversity, which is incredibly welcome. But as we've been hearing, it does present challenges. And we do need to, and those challenges are because of the pace and the scale of these increases and the complexity of that process of change. And we really need to fundamentally adapt the way that we deliver teaching, learning, assessment, and the way that we deliver students services to best support the needs of all of our students. And traditionally in higher education, we have provided very individualized models of support. And those individualized models of support are obviously coming under increasing pressure with rising demand. And they're just models that don't scale. You know, we can't continue to deliver in that way going forward. And so we need to look at how we can be more responsive to the needs of all of our students and to best support them on their higher education journey. So universal design is really fundamental to our response to increasing diversity and to embedding quality higher education, the right to a quality higher education, and a right to a quality higher education experience for all of our students. And it's for this very reason that universal design is the bedrock of the National Access Plan. We're on our fourth. And the ambition within that National Access Plan to increase the diversity of the higher education student population has been an interconnecting thread throughout all of our access plans to date. But what's different about this current plan is that it's really recognising the progress that we've made and building on that and expanding our ambition for inclusive, universally designed environments, higher education environments that are responsive to the needs of all students. And in doing that, the National Access Plan is drawing that fundamental link between universal design and increasing diversity, and really amplifying that universal design is universal in its benefits. A very important thing that the National Access Plan recognises is that that journey to that ambition is incremental. And it was not lost on me yesterday, the number of times that the term incremental was used at that embedding universal design panel here yesterday. And I think another key message that we took away from yesterday is that journey towards that incremental journey is not just for institutions and staff. There's also a parallel piece of work about bringing students along that journey and in changing their mindset and their point of view around their expectations and their experience of support and what those supports should look like. In many ways, the journeys that we have to make universal design more sustainable in higher education mirrors that journey that we're going on in moving from individual support models to more universal models of support. We equally need to move and transition beyond individual champions of universal design to more systemic efforts that can ensure that universal design is implemented in a more sustainable way, which we'll all agree sounds great, but what does that actually mean in practice? Well, there has been fantastic work over the last number of years in building capacity at individual level, and that's been supported by national investment across all the domains of universal design. So if we think about universal design for learning, there's been investment through the Saddle Fund, which I know was name dropped or referenced yesterday. In the technological sector, there's been co-investment through the European Union in tutor projects in teaching and learning. And at the last number of AHEAD conferences, we had great presentations on some of the work that was happening through NTutor, and a lot of them have stayed with me, especially the AI ones, in ways that are both really inspiring and kind of disturbing at the same time, which I think is how we all feel about AI. There's also been investment in embedding universal design principles in our disability support services through strategic initiative funding. And there's a really powerful example of individual capacity building in universal design in that over 6,500 people have completed 2 open courses that are hosted by the HEA and have been developed through the leadership of AHEAD and UCD. So the UD in teaching and learning has been delivered since 2017. And if we're marketing things this morning, Erica, just to reference, it was refreshed last year for anyone who's interested in revisiting that program. And there's also the newly developed Universal Design Beyond the Classroom, which is a really powerful way of professional development opportunity for people who are not based in a classroom but are interested in universal design implementation. And there's real appetite for both of those 2 badges. It's really continuing, and it's great to see. I hope by now you've all heard of Path 4. Anyone? Path 4? Which was established after the National Access Plan was published to really support the ambition towards universal design within that plan. There's been over 5 million invested to date through the Universal Design Fund and then its successor, the Inclusive Environments Fund. And we've seen some really important outcomes from that funding already. So we've enhanced the accessibility of online learning platforms. We have increased the availability of innovative technologies. There's been upgrades to physical campuses, including autism-friendly measures. There has been enhanced capacity of academic and support staff. There has been really good examples of cross-institutional work to develop and refresh institutional policies with universal design principles at the fore. And of course, very proud, the HEA is so proud that Path 4 funding helped support the development of the Altitude Charter. So all of these things are really strong examples of the individual capacity that has been built around universal design. But as I said at the outset, the pace, the scale and complexity of increasing diversity means that we need more systemic efforts in order to ensure that universal design implementation is more sustainable. And this is where the Charter really comes into its own, because it provides a really useful framework for institutions to set out integrated and systemic approaches to universal design implementation that will ensure its sustainability. And I've completely lost my train of thought, to ensure its sustainability. And with the Charter, the thing I find most significant about it is that it was developed by the sector. So led by the sector, for the sector, owned by the sector. And you can see that in how the Charter makes space for institutions to set out what they are going to do in terms of universal design implementation based on where they're currently at in their journey, based on the resources available to the institution. And that's how we can ensure that progress is sustainable. It's not a prescriptive set of this is the way this has to be done, because that's not going to work for every institution, depending on where they are on their journey. So the timing of the development of the Charter really coincided with what I would see as a really observable shift in the conversations that we've been having with institutions around universal design. So the current system performance framework, which, not to bore you, is an accountability mechanism in higher education, allows institutions to set out how they are contributing to national policy and national strategy. And this is a really big change in the system, because before it used to be a laundry list. My arms don't span broad enough for the laundry list of deliverables that used to be assigned to the higher education system to deliver under old frameworks. Now institutions get to say, well, this is what we're going to deliver because this is what we can deliver in a way that's authentic to our mission, our scale, our geographic location. And what we've seen in those conversations around the system performance framework is a significant number of our higher education institutions setting out their commitments to universal design implementation in their performance agreements. So institutions are electing to showcase how much of a priority universal design implementation is to them. And in our conversations with institutions around their performance, what we call strategic dialogue conversations, it's institutions who are raising universal design. It's not me. And what's significant about that is they're not just referencing universal design in the context of access and widening participation. They're referencing universal design under teaching and learning, under research, under engagement. So it's interlaced in all of the activity that institutions are engaging in. So this is really symbolic of that transformation that's happening in the understanding. And that's why the timing of the charter is really important, because the door is open for those systemic approaches. As we heard yesterday, we have senior leadership support now. We have lots of individual champions. Some work we probably need to do around the middle levels, and I think that's going to be the focus of a lot of energies over the coming years on our journey to sustainable universal design implementation. There's work we need to do at national level. Those targeted funding initiatives that have built individual capacity have been really, really important, and we need to continue to ensure that in our funding calls from the HEA, that universal design continues to be essential criteria in our teaching and learning calls, in our access calls, in our capital and campus development calls. We also need to think about how we are directing our core resources. Targeted funding measures, really important, but for change to be sustainable, we need to look at how we're balancing our core resources towards more universal models of support. As we heard yesterday, the opportunities and the challenges that we're facing in Ireland aren't isolated to the Irish context. These are shared experiences and they're shared learnings. And for us, such as today, are incredibly important for us to share those learnings with one another. Our stages in the journey might be different, but the learnings are absolutely universal for everybody. And that's why I'm really delighted that the HEA is supporting the altitude community. That's a little spoiler, because Dara's going to tell you more about that later on. But what that's really going to do is to provide a centralised mechanism for us to continue to that spirit of collaboration that's at the heart of altitude, and to share our learnings with one another. So the key message here is that altitude is really providing an opportunity for us to drive that systemic change, and that we do that through continuing to collaborate and share our learnings and work together. So I really look forward to hearing more from you all over the course of today. And thank you very much again for having me.